Remember Hi-Fi Rush? One of the best games to come out of 2023? The universally loved, stylish game that came out of nowhere and was nominated for a bunch of awards? Yeah, Microsoft shut down the studio that made Hi-Fi Rush, Tango Gameworks, along with a bunch of other developers. Now, a bunch of people are morbidly joking that Microsoft doesn't even want to make games anymore. I think that they're right, and I think that Sony doesn't either. In 2021, Sony shut down their Japan studio, responsible for their small but mighty titles like Patapon and Loco Roco. These titles were charming but fun. They might not have necessarily sold to consoles, but they had modest budgets and were a modest success. Now look at the bigger picture. A lot of the studio shutdowns we're seeing are for all the studios that are doing just that, mid-range titles. The layoffs at Take-Two unjustly shuttered Roll7, the creators of Ollie Ollie and Rollerdrome, along with Intercept Games, the devs behind Kerbal Space Program 2. These signal that Take-Two were done with smaller games and wanted to focus their sights on their bigger bets, like Grand Theft Auto and NBA 2K. I actually don't think that's what Sony and Microsoft are doing, though. They're not betting on games anymore, they're betting on the Valve playbook. Look at Valve's output over the past decade. They've released 8 games. And that's if you can call them games. 3 are spin-offs of Dota that feel like them chasing market trends. 2 are updates to Counter-Strike, and the remaining 3 are tech demos for their hardware. Half-Life Alyx is sort of the exception, but I think it fits in when you look at it from the right angle. Alyx was free for buyers of the Valve Index, and it was the killer VR app. It was a system seller. At the time, if you were buying VR, you were buying it to play this game. The Lab and Aperture Desk Job aren't going to sell any hardware, but they're free, and they're going to show you how cool your hardware is. After playing around with Alyx and the Lab, won't you want to buy more VR experiences from the Steam store? Aperture Desk Job shows you how cool your Steam Deck is. It sure is a shame you can't play your Epic games here. Better buy all your games on Steam so you can play them on your cool handheld. Steam doesn't make its money from making games anymore. It makes most of its money from the 30% cut it takes from games selling on its store. It's so much more money for way less work and cost. If you look at it that way, you can probably see why I think that Sony and Microsoft want a piece of that action too. You know how Alyx was the epic app that got VR users into the Steam VR ecosystem over the Oculus store? It feels like that's the kind of game that Sony's been making lately. It's been years since we've seen a game from Sony like Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, or Little Big Planet. All we've been getting are cinematic blockbusters trying to render the most realistic looking people possible. The Last of Us, Demon's Souls, and Spider-Man 2 are the only notable Sony made exclusives for the system, and most PS5s come with Spider-Man in the box. I think Sony's current strategy is to make a handful of titles with budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's not to sell those games and make a profit from them, but rather to sell more consoles. I think Microsoft's plan is similar, since their major output has mostly been massive titles like Starfield and Halo Infinite. Now you might think, Indie, that's nuts! They lose money on console sales! And you'd be right on both counts. However, if someone buys a PS5, that's where they're going to buy their console games. And this generation, buying games is way different than it used to be. In 2022, 72% of all console game sales were digital. 72%. Now consider that digital-only consoles are starting to gain steam, no pun intended, and more games like Alan Wake 2 release exclusively digitally. On a console manufacturer's storefront, they get a cut of all game sales, just like Steam. Same with add-ons too. If your console's the best place to play Fortnite, that's where people are going to buy their V-Bucks, and you are going to get a cut of all that. Do you see where I'm going with this? Today's gaming landscape feels like it's nothing but indies and massive blockbusters with very little in between, and the reason is because Sony and Microsoft no longer feel like they need to fill that space. Their main interest isn't to make modestly budgeted games intended to make a modest profit. They want to make massive titles that move hardware to get people buying other games from their storefronts where they're going to get a cut. Creative games that might appeal to a smaller niche, even if they cost less to produce, don't get a shot from first parties anymore because it's cheaper to write off of store royalties than to make a brand new game. I'm not 100% sure where Game Pass fits into this theory, but I feel like a massive game is more likely to sell Game Pass subs than smaller ones. Game Pass adds value to an Xbox console purchase, meaning players are more likely to buy games on Xbox or just keep their Game Pass sub going, meaning more recurring revenue for Microsoft. If you have any other theories on this, let me know. The death of mid-tier gaming is heartbreaking for me. Patapon, Sly Cooper, and Hi-Fi Rush are some of my favorite games ever, and it's sad to see Sony and Microsoft slight these games and the people making them. There's still hope though. Nintendo is absolutely filling that niche of AAA game that doesn't need to be 100 hours of photorealism. Just look at Pikmin 4, Tears of the Kingdom, and Mario Odyssey. All these games likely had budgets way more modest than the 9-digit figures we're seeing from some of these blockbusters, but these are just as fun, if not more fun. Making games is also more accessible than ever, so plenty of indie devs are filling that middle tier game space with some amazing titles. I cover plenty of great ones here and on my Twitch channel, so feel free to stick around and check out my recommendations. Thanks for watching my video. I hope it makes sense. This is my first sort of stream of consciousness video, but I have strong feelings about the games industry and wanted to let them all out. I really hope that everyone affected by these layoffs lands on their feet, and that the executives behind these layoffs get their act together. I am tired of watching people make cool stuff and then lose their jobs. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you think my theories here hold weight, or if I'm just way off. Okay, bye!